initially I tried to charge them and they said, go away. And I went, hang on a second, this would be quite good free press. So generated the videos, and they're some of my oldest videos, but some of my most highly watched. And even now I still get a couple of people come up to me in practice. I did one of the farm techs the other week saying like, oh, I've seen your video on YouTube. And it's like, that was done in 2018. Like, this was years ago that this was done. I said, I've got this idea. I'd really like for the practice to have a YouTube account. And they were like, okay, Dave, just, I think they all think I'm a bit weird, and basically said, look, just go away and just have fun with it, see what you do. I probably did too much last year because I sort of like, new partner. I tried to do a PG cert in medical education, which I'll hands up freely admit that I completely failed, which I think we don't talk about our failures enough.
Welcome to this new episode. Today I'm joined by Dr. David Hindmarsh. He's a portfolio GP and he's got a really interesting background as a GP partner with various roles as a medical educator. He also has a YouTube channel called GP Template and he's a founder of GP Template. So for people who don't know you, David, can you introduce yourself?
I think you've done it rather beautifully already. So I'm Dr. David Hindmarsh. As you said, I'm a GP partner. I have multiple hats. So I'm big into medical education. So I'm educational supervisor for medical students from Hull York Medical School, as well as being the associate director for primary care education, as well as being a GP partner for one of the local practices to where I live. And then just to cap it all off, I run a small but slowly growing YouTube channel, GP Templates, which hopefully draws upon my experiences to try and push medical education and provide a lot of free content and just basically help support registrars and train GPs either in getting the most out of System 1 or actually just trying to convert some of the lectures that I'd given onto video.
How did you start developing your portfolio career? Because this is something that more and more GPs are interested.
Yeah, so I'm ex-military. So I joined the military straight out of medical school, completed or left about 18 months ago as a qualified GP. And I knew that from the sort of the state of general practice or sort of the pressures that general practice was under, that doing it 5 days a week was probably going to be a bit too much. So actually I'd always gone into sort of the NHS general practice in terms of thinking, right, well, I know I want to do the majority of my time as a partner, but actually I want to try something else and see if actually, I was always interested in education. So can I try and find something to sort of go alongside that? And that sort of, thankfully, it's worked out really well. And actually a lot of them complement and sort of go along with each other, which is brilliant.
So tell us about your interest in medical education then. How did you develop that, gain experience? Because a lot of GPs are interested in medical education.
Yeah, so mine started initially when I was an F2 doctor, that I'd done my ALS and I was put forward for an ALS instructor. And so I sort of followed through with that and would teach regularly on the ALS courses. Within the military itself, we'd have a lot of junior, what we call medics, who are basically, they're not qualified, but they're expected to deal with sort of like the frontline stuff. So initial injuries, as well as a lot of primary care as well, that they would be expected to handle. So I'd teach them regularly. And then actually it was an appraisal process with one of my seniors who said, actually, you're really, you're not interested in ALS per se, you're interested in education. So actually this is where you should take your career. And actually that advice from the senior, this was years ago, has really, really steered my career at the moment. And then it's all then pulling out just those opportunities. So for example, I've within my actual VTS scheme, so my GP training scheme, I went to one of the organisers and said, look, I'm really interested in medical statistics. It's something that I enjoy. I know it certainly with the applied knowledge test, the AKT, causes a lot of registrars, a lot of stress. I've made this presentation. Do you want me to present it? And they went, oh yeah, actually, that'll be great. So then, one lecture turns into 2, turns into 3, it's sort of like, it just rolls on from there. Likewise, when I was leaving and my current practicing is a different training scheme that I just emailed And it's about just offering yourselves up, saying, hi, I want to train, I enjoy teaching, have you got any sessions that need to be delivered? And they're bit my hand off, really. So it's about putting yourself out there and asking the right people, and then sort of taking it from there, really.
Right, so that's really important, yeah. So most people I talk to who actually got into medical education volunteered to begin with, and sounds like you were enjoying doing that and you were invited to give more teaching. So tell me then, what really interested you in teaching? What were the things that were driving you to do this?
I think it fits in with my personality type. I always enjoyed performing at medical school. So sort of, we'd often have amateurs dramatics. And actually I find sort of teaching is you're putting on a bit of a show. You want to try and entertain people, keep them captivated for sort of like that 90 minutes, 2 hours, however long you've got. And then on the benefit, you're sort of, what I find really good at the moment is that actually, as I see it, to sort of like, right, in my clinic, I can see 12 patients, say in the morning, 12 in the afternoon, maybe a bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on the day. And that's it. There is only a set limit that I can see in a week. There are only so many people I can help. But if I sort of took a step back and taught part of my knowledge to either medical students, other registrars, and actually I'm multiplying my impact. And so it just makes me think, well, actually, is this worthwhile doing? And as soon as I think of it in that way and sort of like maximizing the impact that I can have to help others, then perfect. And the sort of think, right, well, I'll continue to do this.
Yeah, that's a really good advantage of teaching at scale. So one of the things I'd like to talk about is your involvement in YouTube, on the YouTube platform. So because that's something where you're teaching at scale. Tell me more about what really got you into YouTube.
Well, it was a bit of a mistake, really. So initially, where GP templates came from, I was a registrar. I'd created a whole load of System 1 templates. And to be honest, I was trying to sell them. And I thought, oh, it'd be quite cool to set up a little side hustle trying to flog these on. This was Arden's at the time was just in its infancy, which is for those who don't know, it's a big template producer. And to be honest, far outshone anything I could do. So I'd sort of started to generate a couple of videos just to almost show off what I'd produced. And then, as I'm sure you found with your YouTube channel, it sort of rolls on. So basically, I'd put out a handful of videos, and then I had an external locum agency saying, oh, we've seen the videos that you're doing. Could you do us some videos on the basics of System 1? So writing a consultation, prescribing, that sort of like, if a locum was coming into a System 1 practice, never used it before, they got somewhere to go with. And initially I tried to charge them and they said, go away. And I went, hang on a second, this would be quite good free press. So generated the videos, and they're some of my oldest videos, but some of my most highly watched. And even now I still get a couple of people come up to me in practice. I did one of the farm techs the other week saying like, oh, I've seen your video on YouTube. And it's like, that was done in 2018. Like, this was years ago that this was done. And then I put the channel on the back burner. And then mainly because the military don't use System 1, they use a completely separate system. And so I didn't feel that I could maintain it. And then, as I'm sure with a lot of people, I watched far too much YouTube. And I got to a point where I was sick of watching and just thinking like, oh, I wonder if I could actually produce more and use this platform to help others. And so instead of reinvigorating or doing a new channel, I was like, right, I'll just use the one I've got, start pushing out some videos in terms of like, so as I said, some of the education bits. So some of the lectures I've done, I'd sort of chop down into like 10, 20-minute videos, the book reviews, and then sort of just some of my thoughts and processes. So like the one that you saw about me being a portfolio GP. And then it's funny, it's just the traction just keeps on. I just throw out videos that I think, oh, I think people might like this. And then it's funny how it just keeps on rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling. So
yeah, that's the beauty of YouTube. It's such a good platform for educational content. And whenever people have questions about something, they just go on YouTube and then try and find a video where somebody's explaining it. So tell me then, in terms of using that with your practice, how have you implemented that, and how do you get other partners to be involved? Because many GPs, they're not very much attuned to YouTube and technology.
So I think it very much I think you have to choose your practice. And I'm not going to lie, I very much landed on my feet with this one. So my practice turned around and said, I said, I've got this idea. I'd really like for the practice to have a YouTube account. And they were like, okay, Dave, just, I think they all think I'm a bit weird, and basically said, look, just go away and just have fun with it, see what you do. And sort of been really, really supportive with that. And actually, it's in its infancy, but I've got our own separate, like, Eaglescliffe Medical Practice YouTube account. And so in my mind, I use the skills and the creativity that I have from GP templates to then be able to produce quickly medical information videos that sits on the practice account, that then I feel a bit more confident that we can then push out to patients. So for example, the, group A strep, instead of highlighting or instead of pushing out other really good videos that are out there by some other excellent YouTube creators, and think, well, hang on a second, wouldn't it be cool if the practice pushed out its own bit, so that patients, then you building that trust. So instead of it being a well-known YouTube doctor, it's actually your doctor who happens to be on YouTube. So, and what's funny is that those videos are far more popular and gave far more reach than any video that ever I pushed on YouTube. So at last count, it was 500 views, which in YouTube's terms is nothing. But for me, it's like, wow, that's a real big deal. And then you take it back to that, look, I cannot see 500 patients, or it'd take me weeks upon end to see them. And then actually, look, I've spent, say, an hour generating a video. It's taken me minutes to sort of like just push it on Facebook, tweet about it, and then suddenly it's got all these views, people have shared it. We had comments from the local school saying, oh, this is really good information for our parents, let's share it out. And it just, as you say, it just sort of grows. So it's gaining the skills from YouTube and then sort of pushing it into the practice, which the practices have gone like, it's a brilliant idea, just carry on, and have been really open to it.
That's great. So let's come back to how you want to decide to become a partner, because there should be a lot of things going in your mind before making such a commitment. And nowadays, it's even harder to be a partner with all these things that's coming, and there's a lot of stress.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a lot down to personality and how you want to see yourself within the team. So obviously from my military background, I was always used to being heavily involved in a team and being part of the leadership side. So any sort of roles of leadership, I was comfortable to go towards, and that sort of then naturally draws you to partnership. I knew with that I was always looking for a salaried post with view to partnership, and then it just so happened that a practice literally 2 miles away from me was looking for a partner. And I think this is where research sort of comes in. So it was an excellent practice, as in from a CQC standpoint, not just me bigging it up. So, and with a couple of research things that had come out from it as well, and they were clearly pushing forward and innovative. And then really, it's sort of, as with any partnership, it is a marriage. So you've got to go there, you've got to date, you've got to make sure that you've got the right connections there. And then thankfully I have, and we've got a fantastic team in our practice. I've now been there for 18 months and think, well, instead of being, I'm under no illusion that the NHS is under a lot of pressure at the moment, but it's actually thinking, right, well, if it's going to be under a lot of pressure, I'd rather be here with you guys and to try and, keep on top of it from that way.
So tell us, what have been your learning in the last 18 months since becoming a partner?
So that's been a big change. I think one big change, and actually I had my appraisal last week, that I had to sort of really reflect upon, is how I communicate and how sort of like, sort of the phrases that you use within a military setting versus in a civilian setting, perhaps being a little bit less aggressive, and a little less use of swear words from that point. So that's the big one. Secondly, from a medical point of view, it's basically just making sure that if you imagine my initial population that I've had to use in terms of, right, well, I've dealt with a very young, fit, predominantly male population to now generally, where it was rare for me to see someone under the age of 50 or, over 50. Whereas now everyone I see is generally over 50 for the majority of my clinics. And so that medical shift, And then actually it's the learnings of it. I've never had to worry about money or finances. And so it's sort of trying to get my head around that, getting my head reared back around QOF as well, and why we put so much onus on it. And then with all the other targets, working at PCN scale. And that's where I've had to seek a lot of extra support. So I was I was lucky enough to be in the first cohort of the Medics Money Partnership Program, which has been phenomenal education, which I can jumped in and out of, and also just in terms of the other partner support, for having a group of they've got an instant community of partners, all who are relatively new to the job, supporting each other. So I've had a couple of times, not only the education, but actually throwing out a question going, right, we've got this problem at work. How would you tackle it? And having just that support and comments back of going, well, I would do this, well, I would do this, is really just sort of helped me steer it. So that's the bit, there's that real community sense to it.
Yeah, that's great that you found that community of other partners, because I suppose when you become a partner, it's not just being a doctor, you're also a business owner and you have other responsibilities.
Exactly that. You've got the staffing responsibilities, when you're deciding whether people get a pay rise or not. It's all very well saying, oh, we need more staff, but actually we had a meeting the other week trying to balance our medical student commitments versus what impact that will have to our appointments versus what impact that will have for money coming in versus can we afford more staff. And so it's not as simple as just that, yeah, I could do with an extra doctor, a nurse practitioner, etc., and would have all the students in the world. We've got to have that quite pragmatic approach to try and balancing all this out.
Absolutely. And I found people who have this military background, they're very action biased towards making these actions. And because I've worked with another doctor who's got that background, very disciplined. And I like that because you get things moving. Whereas a lot of times I find like the way decisions are made where you have to talk with people and have meeting and there's not much action going on. And I know you're a big advocate of taking action.
Yeah, I laugh because as soon as you said that, I try and convince myself that none of the military has followed me into my current practice. But within the first 6 months, it was like, right, okay, so we're all in scrubs, and we're like, right, well, why is everyone in different scrubs? Let's make branded scrubs from that point. So then suddenly I've instigated a uniform, and you think of it, this sounds all a bit military, where we've got an icon on, we're Eaglescliffe, so we've got an eagle on with the Eaglescliffe medical practice. You've got your name on the other side in your job role. And then obviously we're height of COVID when I joined, made sure that we got pin badges that were emblazoned, so sort of like a pseudo medal to say like, look, we've worked really hard here. And then it was other bits. So within our PCN, we were the only practice on EMIS. And all the other practices, all the other areas, we were in System 1. And I sort of got there as it probably bit naively saying, why are we the only one on a different system? This is actually, and we had a couple of not significant events, but they're just annoyances in that lack of communication. So we couldn't easily communicate, say, with the palliative nurse team, the community matrons. I was like, why aren't we on the other system? And they went, because it's a lot of work and we need someone to lead it. And I was just like, right, come on, I'll do it. Let's get it done. I think the problem is there are times maybe with the military mindset of not quite, maybe just as you say, jumping for action rather than thinking it fully through. But thankfully it's all worked out, he says. So they haven't got rid of me yet. So
it sounds like you're enjoying the challenges and you're making some innovative changes in your practice, which seems to be going very well. So tell us then, what is a week like for you as a portfolio GP?
Yeah, so I try and sort of section it off as best as I can do. So Monday mornings, we're filming this on a Monday. So this morning I was educational supervisor for, I've got 7 medical students that I look after who are in their 4th year. And sort of we had a halfway meeting for their module at the moment, just to make sure they're all on track, and any other sort of those minor niggles, anything else that are going on, and just making sure they're happy from there. Monday afternoon I was in practice. So had a full clinic in the afternoon. Tuesdays, I try and keep free as best as I can for my university work. So, and this is where sort of I try and claw back the sort of the work-life bit. So I will make sure that I don't schedule anything much before 9:30. And if I do that, that means I can drop my son off to school. He goes to school close by, so I can walk him in, drop him off with my wife. We might go for a coffee into town afterwards, and I can come back. It gives me time then to do some work during the middle of the day if I need to, or I can use it as a recharge day just to make sure that I'm good. So Tuesdays are fab. It's quite a nice day for me. Or I might use that day if I've got to do practice visits just to make sure that they're looking after the medical students as they should be. I'll schedule them in on a Tuesday. Or if I'm teaching the local VTS scheme, I'll teach on a Tuesday afternoon generally. And then Wednesday through to Friday, I'm in practice. So Wednesday mornings is our student morning. So currently we've got third year medical students who join me for a morning practice, and that'll be after the practice meeting, which is the first thing. And then sort of Wednesday afternoon is a normal clinic. Thursday, Friday, I'm just become a GP trainer, which I'm really chuffed about. And I've currently got my first brand spanking new ST1 ITP doctor who's come across. And so we sort of like, the Thursday, Fridays will be the joint clinics or tutorials, which are scheduled into there as well. And yeah, I have to apologize to her in advance because I'm probably a bit too keen for her. But anyway, she seems to be.
Well, congratulations. That's a big milestone. So I understand there's quite a lot of work involved to become a GP trainer. How did you find that?
Yeah, it was. I probably did too much last year because I sort of like, new partner. I tried to do a PG cert in medical education, which I'll hands up freely admit that I completely failed, which I think we don't talk about our failures enough. So I'd taken on too much, hadn't realised how much work it was, and just flunked 2 of the modules, and they kicked me off the course. The way they did the GP trainer side was that they had individual modules that I sort of split up throughout the year. So it was trying to just chip away at it and keep going with that way. But it was hard to balance everything, but it was something that I'd always wanted to do from whenever I qualified. So as soon as I got the opportunity, I was like, right, I'm just going to do it. And so I'm at this point now. And as I said, my appraisal last week, I'm just like, right, just going to take stock at the moment. So it would just to sort of hang fire and sort of like, right, just take a breather.
What do you look forward in your career? What are the things that you're working towards?
Well, yeah, I think for me now, the bit that I want to move and sort of develop on is obviously trying to build the sort of the social media aspect of primary care. There are some fantastic doctors out there doing a lot of good work. Dr. Hussein Gandhi comes straight to mind in terms of some of the stuff he's pushing out in primary care and how that can how you utilize social media. And so for me, it's sort of thinking from more with that business mindset of thinking, well, could we develop our social media platform to something better, bigger, that actually we're then promoting patient education even before they hit the practice, so that they're utilizing what limited resources we have to its best. What would be great is actually that a patient doesn't even see me, but they turn around and say, well, I'll watch your video. So instead of coming to you to ask for advice, I just went straight to, I don't know, the musculoskeletal practitioner or a mental health practitioner, rather than coming to see the GP who then says, right, fine, by the way, yes, you need to go and see so-and-so and so-and-so. Frees me up, utilizes the other team appropriately. That's where I really want to push next, is sort of like how, with all these, every video or every handful of videos on YouTube seems to open up something else. So it is addictive, I'm not going to lie. And so I sort of want to try and keep pushing those out more. And likewise, developing my own, developing GP templates. I've had to take a pause. My wife just gave birth about 7 months ago to our little girl Agnes, and so I just, on my channel, I haven't posted anything in ages, and that's a conscious decision. Though it's been niggling in the back of my mind of like, well, actually, no, my family comes first at this point. The channel's still slowly growing, but then you think, right, can I push this a bit further? So yeah, that's the plan for the next couple of years. See if I can push that a bit further.
Well, it sounds like there's quite a lot on your plate. I'm very amazed to see how you're juggling all of this together. So tell us in terms of the hours, and because if you're having to juggle things to do with your family, you've got a newborn, and then new roles as a GP partner, then GP trainer. What are your strategies to be able to manage all of this?
A lot of lists. I have a have a good diary with a to-do list, and I would sort of very, very much make sure that you invest in that. I get very I try and segment my time, so I will make sure that, you know, I will say, right, well, if I leave work by the very latest 6 o'clock, ideally at 5:30, I can get home for dinner time, bath time, bedtime, and I know that that's a real big boost for my own sort of feeling that I'm contributing to the family. And then I don't get too precious over the evenings. So instead of trying to sit and watch TV, like with this, we're in the evening, I'll sort of try and pick up other bits and pieces here. Maybe I'll do a bit of practice work that I see some GPs stay late to do. So like, you know, you'll hear some who say like, right, I stayed in work till 7, 8 o'clock. Well, for me, I would rather leave work early, knowing that I've got this work to do, see my family, put them to bed, and when everyone's asleep and the house is quite right, I'll open up the computer, do an hour or so of work, and then try and get to sleep. It's not perfect by any stretch of means of the imagination. There are times when, and the problem doing work that late is that often it can be difficult to go to sleep because your mind's sort of like, oh, did I fail that blood result? Is this letter correct? And I think as well, it's sort of just realizing, I don't know, personally, I never run it so that my, you know, that my letters is at 0, that my tasks are at 0, that my bloods are at 0. It's sort of, I can't do it. So I sort of go to a point of, I have a mental step of going, well, were they better than when I left them or when I came to work this morning? If the answer is yes, or they're not, I've got a mental time frame of like, right, if letters action due within a week, I'm happy. You know, bloods I'll try and keep as low as possible. And so it's just trying to keep those mental strategies of just beating out the perfectionist, which is easier said than done for the majority of doctors. So yeah, I'm nowhere near perfect, far from it, because I still get frustrated. I still beat myself up that I haven't done a YouTube video in ages, that I've got one to be edited. I've got one from a couple of months ago that I still need to chop and put together. But you know, it's only 24 hours in the day.
Yeah, that's right. I think sometimes we have to accept that because there's so much, then we need to look at what is our priority here. And as you say, you just pose the GP template and focus on other things that for the time being you want to focus on. And yeah, building a YouTube channel and growing it takes a long time, and it's a lot of work. So it sounds like you want to go more into social media and using that. And I think I saw one of the videos where you were talking about self-triage, how patients can do it, because I think it's really important to have these educational videos from somebody who's qualified, because on social media there's a lot of people who might not be very qualified and giving advice. When it comes from somebody who is qualified, then the advice is something that has some credibility in it.
Yeah, and I think that comes with, because it's a relatively new field, I think sort of you have to be cautious with it. But then I look at it on the counter, I've got a handful of publications to my name, and I think, well, hang on a second. As long as my work is referenced the same way that I would write a paper, I don't see much of a difference. So like if I've got a script that has got reference A and it's within, and the joy of the good thing of YouTube is that you can put those references in there. So like my Strep A video was nothing more than basically a ripped off from the NHS information, but just instead of you reading it, it's me speaking it with a nice background, basically, and that's the difference. Yeah, and I think it perhaps then sort of gears towards more the way patients, certainly the younger patients, consume information. And it's interesting, I've had a handful of consultations where I remember one distinctly, a very young, I think she was 18, came in and said, oh, I watched a TikTok video where someone talked about skin cancer. I've got this mole that's been growing. I wanted it checked out. And it's just interesting that she was completely correct in terms of how she accessed healthcare, but her trigger to access was because she saw this video. And then taking your point of thinking, well, hang on, instead of it being someone without a medical qualification, or perhaps is interpreting the information incorrectly, why can't we have someone who is trained, basically of a clinical background, doesn't have to be a doctor, who can then give their information out there?
Yeah, I think there is space for GPs to actually go on social media and do more of that type of work. Have you been following ChatGPT? So a lot of things been going on. What do you think about that in general practice?
Oh, I think it's, I've seen it being, there was an excellent podcast, again, by eGP Learning, who talks about ChatGPT, and I think they were using it for, it was talking about a weaning dose of sertraline, or, an antidepressant. Then they used ChatGPT saying, like, a quick line of saying, could you give patient information about weaning a dose off for this? And it came out with a beautiful spiel from that point. And it was really good. I think the bit that I just get a bit, not so much from a medical space, but I've seen in other areas, is where and I saw a couple of doctor friends of mine who were delivering a teaching session. They said, oh, give me a teaching session on eye injuries. And they gave a beautiful lesson plan. But then one of my friends who's in the group that we're in, who's a ophthalmology registrar, said, well, actually, some of the information in here is wrong. And that's where I get a bit twitchy about ChatGPT, that even though it's excellent in terms of what it's producing, but it's like, I think with anything, it's like, reference needed, or just making sure that it's producing the correct information, rather than it just sort of, in my limited understanding of it, just trawling all this information and then being able to spout it out.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there is a lot of things that it can do, but then there is also that percentage of error, and we don't really know how much is true and how much is not. So yeah, there's some nuances that people who are not professional might not catch. Tell us, if you had to go back in time, David, and you were starting your career again as a portfolio GP, what would you do?
So I think for me, obviously, with the educational bent, if that's the way you want to go, it's really about building that experience. And so, as I sort of touched upon before, if you can get part of a regular teaching, and just, as you say, volunteering yourself, maybe unpaid at first, but generally, as with all these things, unpaid becomes paid. I think as well, despite me being very honest and failing my education qualification initially, having that, qualification behind you, if you are interested, is a really good foot in the door, because it's one of those where you go, right, prove to me that you can teach. Now, for me, I have to go, well, actually, I've used my YouTube channel, I've got all these educational bits that I've pulled together, and that's my proof. Whereas actually, if you've got that qualification, it just helps and sort of helps pushing things from. So getting the PG cert, and there a whole load of distance learning degrees that can sort of be on offer. I think as well, tying in with medical students. So if you're a junior doctor on the ward, you will have medical students. There will be someone who coordinates them. So reaching out to them, saying, look, do you need a foundation doctor, a junior doctor to teach them? Because believe me, we've got them as part of our team. We've also got a clinical fellow, so she is post-foundation pre-speciality trainee. She's doing a year out just to help teach, coordinate all the medical students, and that's invaluable experience. And also, it's about that contact building as well. So she's going into a general practice training. I'm already like, right, well, I'll make sure I keep your details, just to make it, because I worked with her closely for the year. So it's sort of like, well, actually, I want to keep working with you. You're a fantastic teacher, because the students I hear throughout prompting that, so it's these opportunities that are available. And it's just asking as well. I think as well, certainly if looking at, I think publishing really helps, because it's sort of, you're focusing on a subject, and you can, whether it's an educational article. So I wrote a couple of articles for our GP registrar journal, Innovate, but I'm sure every college has got sort of similar bits. And even if you're just getting in the idea, you've got an audit that you need publishing, it helps solidify the mind and put it into a way that you can then present. And likewise, once you've got that, be bold with it, push it for publication, presentation, and just keep pushing yourself out there, because it all helps and it all keeps your brain. What I like about it is that it keeps you up to date as well.
You have to be up to date when you're teaching to others, and usually you have to know more about it if you can teach it and simplify it to somebody else. So for people who might not have the confidence that you have, David, put themselves out there, what would you say they could do?
Practice makes perfect. That's the best one, Stephen. Practice makes perfect. Believe me, for my bigger presentations, my leg will be shaking. I'll be nervous. Won't get much sleep the night before. So, even though with this, you and me talking on a camera, I've very little qualms about it going out on YouTube, etc. So I may come across as confident, but it is very much learnt. And so it's sort of just, as they say, sort of faking it until you make it, sort of like just keep practicing, keep pushing out, and then just build up for it. Don't expect, if I'm delivering a presentation to 100 people, I'm going to be really, really nervous. So start small, one-on-one, 1 to 2, and don't put yourself in an awkward position. So like, if you're a very experienced doctor and you're teaching medical students, play the odds. There's a good chance you are going to know more than them. I say that though, I've been outsmarted by far too many medical students in my time. So I sort of put that with a real big pinch of salt, especially when they ask pathophysiology questions that I know nothing about, and they can tell me to the nth degree what's going on. So yeah, as with anything, making videos, presenting, it's a skill, and skills need to be practiced. And if you're not practicing, I am not naturally good at this. I am better than someone else because I've done a lot of it. And that's long and short of it.
So practice and develop your skill. The more you practice, it's very important to seek feedback and improve, and that's how you get better. So I really like what you said about start small. As you get more developing your skill, then you can go and teach a larger group, and that's how you develop it. Yeah.
And I think what was great about my general practice trainer training was that I had a senior trainer observe me delivering a teaching session, and he did this over 6 sessions, and the feedback I got from that was so invaluable. To say, someone who's far more experienced than myself coming along and said, "Do you realize you do that?" I had no idea, absolutely no idea. And likewise, if you're giving the same tutorial, again, get feedback and don't be afraid to shape it. I will tweak and try something new. And if it comes up in feedback, I'll make sure I adjust it. And I've had to change a lot due to my feedback, not all positive.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the beauty of feedback. Like, it's something that allows you to get better. And sometimes if you're just having positive feedback, it doesn't really help you to improve it.
I had, I remember it now because I sort of still used it, that I just got out of the military. I'd been out about a month or two. I'd been used to teaching a military population. Someone got a wrong answer, and to be honest, I berated them in a way that was appropriate for the military environment and would have been laughed off, but it just was probably borderline bullying from that way. And I got it in the feedback in black and white. And when you've calmed down and you read it back and you think, yeah, they've actually got a really good point there. So it's sort of like having that black and white. You need to change the way you present yourself due to the audience that you're picking, and thinking, okay, yeah, that's brilliant feedback. I'll take that on board. And again, sometimes you can't do that in the moment because you do put yourself out there. You do put a lot of effort into this. And so it hurts when people don't give you anything but positive. But I think the majority of the time, people actually give you very sensible advice. You just need to listen to it, unfortunately.
Before we wrap up, tell us about, have you got any interesting books that you would recommend people to read? Because I know that you've done some book reviews on your channel.
Yeah. Oh, which ones to start? Oh, crumbs. That is a fantastic question. I've got like 4 or 5 if you're happy with that from that one. So personal development ones that everyone needs to read. Chimp Paradox, in terms of how dealing with your own mindset, definitely with that one. Atomic Habits as well, about sort of setting healthy habits and trying to break bad habits and how to alter your environment. from that one. One that I would strongly recommend, certainly if you're a bit just trying to make the best out of your life, is The Unfair Advantage. That's on my list to review because it is phenomenal. So it's written in a way of, everyone has their own unfair advantages, and instead of using, say, that as a negative, that I can't get this far because of X, Y, and Z, actually using those for your benefit. And it's made me think about how, right, what am I good at? What's my unfair advantage, and how can I manipulate that for the good of my practice? So, for example, me setting up a YouTube channel for my practice is me playing my unfair advantage that I know how to do it. Whereas me then sort of trying setting up a coil clinic where, stereotypically, I don't think females would be very pleased to see me sort of potentially in doing their coils. Gross stereotype, and I do apologize for that one, but sort of to get the point. So that one's a brilliant one. Millionaire Fastlane, I think, is another really good one to look. It made me just re-alter, though it's more about, it is a very business mindset. The first half is very much how you interact with money, and made me think of like, right, okay, well, can I adjust my living to within my means, so that when it now comes to I'm managing this portfolio career, I'm not chasing the money. I'm chasing actually, right, well, I want to do this job because it interests me and it keeps me going. And I know that actually I've got enough money coming in to cover my family, my car, my mortgage. And then that's enough, really. And then any more than that is just vanity, which I can just sort of push to one side. So yeah, I think they're probably the four.
Good recommendation for people to start with. And I really enjoy the unfair advantage concept, because I think as a portfolio GP, that's something that it's really important to sit down and think, what are your strengths, what are you good at, and how you can use that to carve a career that's going to be better for you, because you don't want to go and compete with other people who have unfair advantage on you. So you want to use your unfair advantage to actually thrive in your career.
Exactly that. And I think it's worth a read exactly for that, just to shape your career. Because if you're no good at teaching and you've got no interest into it, don't go into education. Whereas actually you've probably got another unfair advantage that I don't. So play it. So completely agree.
Thank you very much for your time. So where can people connect with you, David?
So yeah, you can connect with me obviously on YouTube, GP Templates. I'm on Twitter at GP Templates, and also there's a Facebook group as well called GP Templates, just to keep it all nice and simple.
If you find this video useful, then I'm sure you're going to get a lot from watching this video. Click the video to watch it. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.